Throughout college, we're told happiness means many things. Some say it's an A plus at the end of a hard school day. Some say it's eating ice cream with friends while looking at the sunset. Some say it's finding your purpose and embodying it in the world. And some say it's cocaine. Not me, but statistically, somebody in your university says it's that. These are all aspects of relative happiness, the momentary contentment, pleasure, or joy you experience because of something. And they're all beautiful in their own right. But ultimately, like with all states, these moments fade and we're back to searching for happiness in a sea of stars. What no one tells you about happiness in college is this: relative happiness, the momentary state, is not true happiness. What you want and have been searching for your entire life without realizing it is absolute happiness. Absolute happiness includes everything in relative happiness and more. It's internal, loving identity with life, with consciousness as it is right now, free of needing it to be any different. The realization, consciousness, your life is already whole, already complete, already loving, already perfect. I know what you're thinking. Aiden, what wah wah wee wah grass have you been smoking? I can't just snap my fingers and suddenly be happy. And actually, I understand. That's not really what it is that I'm saying. By the end of this video, you will deeply understand why we aren't happy now, how uniquely to uncover what makes you happy compared to others, and the principles of becoming happier, both relatively and absolutely. Realize I should probably stop saying absolute happiness because every time I do, another economics major unsubscribes. But this is a video about happiness, so what are you going to do? This is the culmination of years, 6 years of searching for happiness myself and cross-referencing of countless books, videos, podcasts across the happiness spectrum. I ventured into both science and spirituality, nonfiction and fiction. Science books like Stumbling Upon Happiness by Daniel Gilbert, Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke, and The World Happiness Report. And also spiritual books like The Religion of Tomorrow by Ken Wilber, Happiness Beyond Thought by Gary Welber, and Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, as well as so much more. This is a juicy video. You are going to learn more about happiness than you ever thought possible. So, the only question is, are you ready? Let's get into it then. Let's start with the real fundamental question. Why are we not happy right now, in this moment, as you're watching this video? In order to answer this, we need to first ask what you think unhappiness is, or what you might think, which will then allow us to answer what unhappiness truly is. All of the things that I'm about to tell you are correct in part, but not in whole. They are surface problems that are on top of the deep structures that make you fundamentally unhappy. So don't think as I go through these that they're totally wrong. Absolutely they're wrong, but relatively they definitely have an influence on why you're so unhappy. So let's start with one of the most pervasive, which is hedonic adaptation. Hedonic adaptation is the universal human tendency to adapt to positive or negative changes in our life. And one of the funny examples of this is when I first came to college, lost the most important thing in my life, which was natural peanut butter. I know, an absolute tragedy. I've been eating peanut butter my whole life. My mom got me into it because we exercise so much. And when I came to college, they didn't have natural peanut butter. So I ate sunflower butter from the dining halls or processed butter, peanut butter from the store. And after a few years of this, I couldn't take it anymore. So I got natural peanut butter from my mom. Every time I'd go back, I'd take natural peanut butter with me to Cornell. And the funny thing is, I thought this would make me substantially happier having natural peanut butter, but like with most changes in life, I just adapted to it. And at this point, I still eat natural peanut butter, but I don't really notice it anymore. So that's hedonic adaptation in play. Another reason we think we're unhappy is because of a wrong application and balance of dopamine and serotonin. So we we tend to here's a better way of explaining it. Dopamine is not just pleasure from doing activities, but as we learn in Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke, it's also the anticipation of reward. And serotonin is the, you could call it like the contentment hormone. It does contentment neurotransmitter. It does so much other things as well, but that's a good way of saying it. So the difficulty is that we now are in a context where we're getting dopamine and serotonin from things that we weren't evolved to get them from. So we get them from video games like Zelda, Minecraft, or Expedition 33, as well as using social media or watching shorts, which means that we don't have as much dopamine or serotonin for other things in life, like working on our career or studying for college. And a lot of the reason we think we're unhappy is because we need to figure out how to balance these neurotransmitters again and find ways to get them in real life activities that are more productive. Another reason we think we're unhappy is the negativity dominance of media. So, for example, I go online nowadays and I learned that 33 golden retriever puppies were just brutally killed in a building collapse. Immigrants are being funneled out of the country for existing, and Trump wants all of Greenland to be part of the U.S., which is funny because I don't think he realizes that Greenland is not as big as it actually is on the map because of the Mercator projection, but that's an aside. So when you go on media and you see all this, it can be very easy to think, God, the world sucks. And the reason is we have a negativity bias in our consciousness because negative things were more likely to kill us when we were evolving on the savannah. So another reason we think we're unhappy is because of how much negativity we feel like is around us all the time, especially if we consume a lot of the news. Another reason for our unhappiness is lots of schoolwork, exams, and busyness. I remember when I was in Cornell, there were some times where I would have Thanksgiving break and a professor would actually schedule an exam the day after Thanksgiving break, which, man, that made me so mad. Like, it's not really a break if you have to study during the break because of the exam. I mean, your brain evolved to survive lions, not deadline dread. So, yeah, that is another reason we think we're unhappy. A second to last reason is we don't have clarity over our future. I met a guy a few days ago who said he likes computer science, but has literally no idea what he wants to do with it. He's just interested in it. And he's in his like third year of college. So I'm not judging him, but I could see the dread inside of his eyes, the anticipation and fear and anxiety of what am I actually going to do with this? And that causes a lot of unhappiness. So that's the second to last reason. The last one, and perhaps one of the strongest, is unmet survival needs. Unmet survival needs like bad relationships, bad financial security, bad housing situation, bad physical health. All of these are huge contributors to unhappiness. And I'm sure there's many things I haven't said, but in broad, those are a lot of the aspects for why we think we aren't happy. And they do have some truth. But here's the thing. They aren't the deep problem. They're the surface level issue. Let me tell you what unhappiness really is. To understand why you aren't happy right now, we need to understand the metaphysics of happiness. And fascinatingly, most religious and spiritual traditions throughout history have actually agreed on this on a deep structure level. Surface structures, huge variation, of course, but deep structure-wise, most religion and spiritual traditions have agreed on this. Here's the insight. It's very simple and yet infinitely complex. You're not happy simply because you're too selfish. You're not happy simply because you're too selfish. Let me explain what I mean by that. In order to navigate reality, we have to self-other, which means we ascribe parts of reality to ourself, we identify with them, and parts of reality to not self, other. Usually the parts of reality we identify with are our possessions, our body, and our mind, including our beliefs, major thoughts, emotions, and loosely our relationships and loved environments. And then the parts of reality we other or disidentify with are material objects, strangers, members of the opposite political party, the rest of the world. Most importantly, things that we believe we need to have in order to be happy. Because if we already had them, then they would be a part of ourselves and we'd be happy. So we do this. Here's the insight. Relative happiness is the search for happiness in relative states through getting the things we other. The problem is that reality is fundamentally impermanent. So it's a losing game. By impermanent, I just mean it changes all the time. Nothing lasts. Even this moment, experience directly that this moment is not permanent. I'm talking to you, new insights are coming, new words are coming out. After you finish this video, the day's not going to last. The relationships that you have won't necessarily last. The feeling of being a college student, not going to last. Reality is fundamentally, at the metaphysical root level, impermanent. And it has to be that way, because if it was permanent, you wouldn't be able to be conscious of it. Because to even have awareness of consciousness, you need some degree of impermanence. Because how can a permanently unchanging thing be aware of itself unless it had some degree of change? So the losing game that we play and why we are unhappy relatively is we attach to impermanent things and then become unhappy when we don't get them or they don't stay the same. Ta-da! So just think about how profound that is. Like this is deep, deep stuff. It should shake you to your bones, the individual atoms in your body, how insane of a realization that is. Which then should lead you to the question, okay, why are we so selfish? And how do we navigate this? So firstly, why are we so selfish? We're selfish because it's deeply, deeply practical to our survival, to our self-survival, and to our collective survival. I mean this both on a physical and a psychological level. On a physical level, having a self-othering is deeply practical. If you didn't self-other to some degree, there'd be no reason for after this video you to drink some water, eat some food, go to sleep. Because why would you do any of those things if you didn't prioritize yourself over the things you were eating, the water that you were drinking? Why would you even care about sleeping if you didn't care about some relative state in yourself of being well slept? On a psychological level, it's even more profound because most of us in elite colleges don't survive physically as much anymore. We don't have to. We survive on a psychological level. We survive our beliefs, our ideas, our relationships, our emotions, our thoughts, and most importantly, our identities. In order to change, we would have to die to this self. Changing a belief, changing your identity is so difficult because it literally is psychological death. And this applies both on a self level and a collective level. You survive the groups that you're a part of, the clubs you're a part of, the major that you're in, the classes you're in, your friendship circle. Because if you didn't, then you wouldn't be a part of them. Now, I don't want it to sound like this is an inherently negative thing. No, it's neither good or bad. It just is. This is deeply practical. If you didn't do it at all, physically you would die. Psychologically, it would be very painful. So don't think of self-survival and collective self-survival as something that you have to come to with contempt or disgust. It is something you come to with kindness, love, and compassion. It's like everything in life. Now, once you recognize self-survival and collective self-survival, the question is, okay, why, even with that recognition, do we not do something about it? Do we not navigate our self-survival and our collective survival? The fundamental reason is because of our low grounding structure stage and our state stage. In order to talk about this, I must refer to integral theory by Ken Wilber, which is a profound theory that summarizes a ton of the different developmental human models into a single meta model that describes the two different spiritual paths that you can go down. The first spiritual path is growing up, which is all about growing how it is that you interpret and perceive the world. Growing your ability to adopt perspectives, to think critically, to integrate and transcend various perspectives. In the model, he talks about a whole bunch of different structure stages with colors. You don't need to know all of them. You just need to know, likely because you're in an elite college institution, you are either orange or green, and much more likely a mix between the two. When we have a low structure stage, it makes it harder to navigate our self and collective survival because at orange and green structure stages, we aren't conscious enough to even be aware of our own selfishness. In the same way that a tier 2 structure stage, like teal or turquoise, is able to do, because they are tier 2 because of their ability to transcend and integrate between all of the structure stages. So that's one reason that it's so hard to navigate the self-survival and collective self-survival is a low grounding structure stage. Another reason is we have a low grounding state, which is the second spiritual path in integral theory, waking up, growing what it is that we perceive in reality. Where structure stage is about how we interpret what we see. State is about what it is that we even experience in the first place. There's 4 different deep states throughout most religion and spiritual traditions, those being gross, subtle, causal, and non-dual. You don't need to know what those are. All you need to know is that when you're in a low grounding state, like gross, you mistake all that reality is as the gross, material, rational, objective world, including matter, your body, and your mind. Nothing else. And this makes it very hard to experience absolute happiness because you don't think there's anything else to reality aside from what is here. That cuts you off from the incredible degrees of happiness and love that you can experience in higher structure stages and higher states, like subtle, causal, or non-dual. The last reason, which ties into why we self-survive and collect to survive, is our shadows, which are the parts of ourself that we attach to either through an addiction or an allergy. Addiction means we're so tied to something we can't appreciate how it's affecting us, whereas allergy means we're so avoidant of something we can't appreciate how it's affecting us. So a shadow might be we're so addicted to focus because we're scared of the emotions that will come up if we stop working so hard. The emotions from ignoring figuring out our life purpose or navigating that one friendship that's really difficult for us. It could be an allergy, which is there because we're so avoidant of a homework that we have to do or studying that we have to do because we don't know if we should be in the major that we're in. And so we go on shorts or we go and procrastinate. These shadows keep us from dissolving the self-other divide because we're so attached. And so we can't realize absolute happiness because of how attached we are to ourself from these shadows. So with all of this in mind, we can talk a little bit more about why it is that relative happiness is insufficient for feeling truly happy. The insight is there is absolutely no reason you need any relative thing to be happy. You're imagining that you need it. By imagination, I mean you are internally generating this need. It is not externally imposed by some substance of reality. It's not like somewhere in the universe it's written that you need X to be happy. you think God took a pen and wrote it into the fabric of the stars that you need 33 likes on Instagram in order to be happy? No. Trust me, likes do not give you happiness. All right? Just you want to experience hell, just start a YouTube channel. So, absolute happiness sounds imagined until you realize that everything else you chase is also imagined, only louder. Happiness is not found at the end of some road because the road itself is made of longing. Let me make this concrete with the relative happiness examples from before. So, me hedonically adapting to peanut butter. I'm imagining that the adaptation to the peanut butter is a bad thing and that it means I can't be happy. Nothing in the universe says that's true. I'm imagining that not getting as much happiness from the peanut butter means I can't be happy. Too little dopamine and serotonin or the wrong balance of where it's applied to. I'm imagining that I need the right balance of serotonin and dopamine in my life in order to feel happiness right now. And that if I just had that right balance, then I could finally be happy. Negativity dominance of social media. I'm imagining that the negativity of the news means I can't be happy right now, because how could I possibly be happy if all this bad stuff is happening in the world? That would be cruel, wouldn't it? Exams after Thanksgiving break. I'm imagining that an exam right after the break means I can't be happy right now because that sucks. I don't want an exam right after the break. It means I have to study during the break when I should be able to relax. No clarity over the future means I can't be happy right now without this clarity, because I need to figure out what I'm going to do first before I can allow myself to be happy. Then once I have figured out what I'm going to do for the future, then I'll be happy. And lastly, unmet survival needs, like bad relationships, finances, housing. How could this possibly be imagination, right? We need that. Aiden, I need good relationships. I need good financial standing. I need good housing to be happy. And yet this still even is imagination. In fact, it's the most deceptive form of imagination because it feels the most real. It feels the most necessary. So absolute happiness, we can give it a concrete definition now that we've gone through these relative happiness domains. Absolute happiness is not the rejection of relative happiness. Again, I'm not saying these aren't useful, important things to consider when getting ourselves to be happier. I'm saying that absolute happiness includes everything in relative happiness and more. It transcends and integrates it by realizing that happiness at the absolute level is just an internal, loving identity with life, with consciousness as it is right now, free of needing it to be any different. Imagine that. Imagine dissolving the self-other divide to the point where you realize that there is nothing you need to be happy. Where you can be happy in the sad moments, in the negative news, in the disclarity over the future, in not meeting survival needs. In this sense, absolute happiness is the same as absolute love, which of course it is. Everything absolute is the same because it's absolute. We suffer not because life is cruel, but because we draw the circle of me too small. And you say, Aiden, this sounds like a fever dream. And I'll admit, for you, even still for me to some degree, it likely is. This is the ideal identity with life. That's why we need to understand all of relative happiness so that someday we can get to the ideal of absolute happiness. I'm not saying this is attainable right now. There's a lot of shadows you might have to navigate, a lot of transcending and integrating structure stages and states, navigating yourself and the other divide. But once you do that, rooted in absolute happiness, that's how you achieve true everlasting happiness. Not through some relationship or some less usage of phone or a great business in college. Right here, right now, with nothing else. And if you really want to do that, it's really helpful to take my free college freshman college cosmic journaling kit, which is something I made specifically for doing stuff like this. It's a gamified journaling system with over 1,000 journaling questions and 5 templates to grow your emotional intelligence, your self-understanding, and your purpose in just 15 minutes a day. And ultimately to become happier. So you can get that in the description below. It's now important that we talk just a little before we get to the general principles of becoming happier, taking relative and absolute happiness in mind. We need to talk about some myths of happiness, because there's likely a lot of questions that you have after everything I've been spewing so far. The first big myth is that absolute happiness is something you should be able to achieve right now. Remember, absolute happiness includes relative happiness. The path to realizing happiness is This ideal identity comes in growing the maturity of your relative happiness. The thing is, most people don't have enough deep happiness structures to be absolutely happy right now. Too many shadows, too little maturity in structure stages, too little development in states. The less mature you are, the more selfish you act. So the art of achieving happiness is in building your deep happiness structures until you can realize absolute happiness. Another myth is that absolute happiness inherently means positivity. This is very misguided. Absolute happiness includes negative moments. It is being happy while experiencing emotions. Example from my own life, which is particularly valent for me now. My ex and I recently went on a trip together because we're still really good friends. And they told me on this trip that they really love this person that they're in a partnership with right now. And the thing that I was so astounded by was because of all this work in relative and absolute happiness, I was actually able to love and be happy for this moment for my ex because she found someone that loves her in the way that she needs to be loved in the moment, even though it's not me. Joy matures not by fleeing pain, but by widening enough to hold it. Another myth of absolute happiness is that it means doing nothing. Because if you don't need anything to be happy, well, why would you do anything? And absolute happiness does not mean that. It just means you love the present experience for the experience without wishing that it was otherwise or needing it to be otherwise. Emphasis on the need, on the attachment to the experience being different. So an example would be me creating this script. I'm technically changing things. I'm bringing something to being that wasn't there before, but I'm not changing it believing that I need this to be happy. I can be happy without making the script. It's the difference between relative and absolute happiness. Another myth is that everyone has a special way of finding happiness. This is a liberal notion, which is great. To some degree, it's true. Everyone does have a special way of finding happiness. Some things that make me relatively happier won't make you, I can assure you. But the problem is when it's taken too far. I guarantee you doing heroin every day is probably not going to make you sustainably happy over the long term. And the issue when you take it too far is then you are too accepting of everyone's own method of finding happiness. For example, this is gone in the other direction in a wrong way when conservatives sometimes say, some conservatives, of course not all, there's only one way to become happy. And it includes, following God, having a good family unit. The problem with this is that it's also taken too far, which is obviously there are people that are happy that don't do that. And where both of these come into challenge with each other is the myth that you shouldn't tread on other people's happiness. Like, Aiden, if I figure out that I'm happy in this specific way, it's whose right is it to tread on my ability to do that? Or whose right is it to tread on someone else's ability to do that? Yes, to some degree, this is true. But the problem is that this is often the conservative notions of happiness trample systemically on other people's ability to be happy. And some conservatives, of course, some are more conscious, don't want to admit this because on an individual concrete level, they don't think they're doing anything that is making the world less able to be happy, because it doesn't seem in an everyday sense like that's happening. But even by participating in systems, participating in laws, supporting political leaders that tread on other people's ability to be happy, that is itself treading on other people's ability to be happy. So you can't just say, okay, never tread on other people's happiness, because they're making it harder for other people to be happy. Now, of course, the liberals do this to some degree too. I'm not only saying this is true of conservatives, but it's more true of conservatives overall. So now that we've gone through some myths of happiness, let's go to the real gold of this video, which are general principles of becoming happier with relative and absolute happiness in mind. Let's talk about some general principles of becoming happier using everything we've known. Every one of these principles is united by one thing, which is they all make us less selfish. And of course they do. That's exactly what helps us realize absolute happiness, is learning to dissolve that self-other divide more absolutely. The prison of relative happiness was real only because you never tested the door. These will all help you test the door. So the first principle of generally becoming happier in college is living with more integrity. Importantly, living with more integrity by both doing something and not doing something. So, funny example for me is I get tremendous happiness from not eating junk food. And the reason is that my ideal self is one that is able to live to their highest potential by doing videos like this, by helping people become more spiritual. And in order to do that, I need to be healthy physically. So every time I reject a cupcake or a donut, it's helping me build even closer to that vision, because being healthy helps me do that so much easier. Another general principle is becoming more humorous. What actually is humor? It's really interesting if you ask yourself. Humor is basically dissolving your serious grip and attachment to the self. That's exactly what's happening when you're laughing, is you're not attaching to something as heavy. That's the metaphysical underlying of every single joke. So when you become more humorous as a whole, check out my humor video, You're Not Boring, You Just Don't Have College Humor Skills, to learn more. You start to see the whole world as funnier, which lets you dissolve that self-other divide more and become happier. And if you want to do that even more, just watch more Conscious College videos, because, you know, I'm a gosh darn stand-up comedian here. Another principle is giving more. Donate all your life savings to me. Don't worry, it goes to charity, the aid in charity. Giving more, for some reason, it makes you feel a lot better than receiving. I don't know what it is, if I'm being honest. But the absolute reason you could say is because giving to others is actually giving to yourself, because there's no difference on an absolute level. Another principle is conditioning your brain for contentment and satisfaction. So doing boring things more often and reveling in the boredom. A lot of the relative reason we're not happy is because we're so used to this constant short form media and engaging conversations that we can't just take joy in just sitting and doing absolutely nothing. I'm talking reveling in having a cup of tea while watching the sunset for 2 hours without anything else. Imagine how much easier it is to be happy in other moments if you can be happy even then. Another principle is remodeling your information diet to have more happiness boosting integrous things. My own information diet includes a lot of Ken Wilber, Leo Gura, John Vervaeke, a lot of spiritual stuff. I don't consume that much news. I consume news for the most important, essential informations, but for the most part, I'm of the opinion that a lot of it you don't need to know because you can't do anything about it anyways. So remodel your information diet to be more conscious, more integrous, more happiness boosting. Not just information from literal digital sources, but also information from the relationships you have. Which brings us to the next point, which is build incredible relationships of character. Relationships of character are people that literally draw out a more loving, happy relationship identity with reality. People who pursue some of these other principles of happiness, those are the people you should be friends with. People who you love deeply for what they embody about the world, how they make you identify to college. Another principle is becoming really good at something on your own. So for me, that's writing, creating YouTube videos, public speaking, personal branding, etc. Get happiness from the intrinsic joy of becoming great at something, becoming excellent at it. Which brings us to the next point. Do something for the sake of the thing. Like for me, it's writing blog posts, short stories, resistance training at the gym, which, by the way, the steroids really help. And anything that you want to do without the need for getting anything out of it. And finally, get into flow more often. Flow is when we're so deeply immersed in an activity that we lose consciousness of the self and enter into a timeless present, which is first discovered by psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And I summarize in my framework actions, which you don't need to know concretely. Check out my video on flow to learn more. But getting into flow is essentially an art of just getting clear on the goal you have for a certain activity, making the amount of skill that you have relative to the challenge be in balance, navigating distractions, and also just navigating your shadows more, because those will come up as you try and get into flow. So for me, I get into flow a lot walking around and contemplating reality, writing, reading, exercising. There's a huge difference between a day where I don't have a lot of flow and a day where I do. Still rooted in the knowledge that I don't need flow to be happy, but relatively, I do feel better when I get flow states. I'm in a flow state right now. I love recording videos. It's really fun. Those are the more general, easier principles of becoming happier. Here are the advanced principles of becoming happier, which root more in absolute happiness. The first one is build more reflective practices into your life. Reflective practices are all bent on understanding yourself so you can better appreciate and dissolve the self-other divide. Some examples are meditation, which doesn't work for everyone, particularly those with creative minds. I like to joke that meditation is basically sitting long enough to realize that you have a psychopath in your head. But what meditation really is deepening your awareness to dissolve the self-other divide, which is interesting because a lot of meditation has been simplified in the West to just be about non-judgmentally coming towards your thoughts and feelings, which is great. That's a fundamental part of meditation. But that's a very small aspect of what meditation truly can be. Meditation truly can be about building love, building knowledge, and building your consciousness. So that's a great one to have in your toolkit. Mindfulness is also great. Mindfulness is essentially meditation, but spread to your entire day. Becoming incredibly aware of and conscious of every aspect of your life. Training yourself to become deeply aware when your shadows come up and make it more difficult to be happy in a moment. Journaling is a fantastic reflective practice, particularly if you go from level 1, daily journaling, to levels 2, 3, and 4, which I talk more about in my video on journaling up above, and I help you do in my Cosmic Journaling Kit in the description below. Another advanced reflective practice is navigating your shadows, which is, for example, for me, I needed to navigate my attachment to needing others to feel happy during experiences. I used to feel like if I'm so realized in myself, why not share that with another person? It seems like a waste to just do it on my own. I remember there was one time I was sitting at BB 3 years ago, the lake near my apartment. Gorgeous sunset. Geese and ducks were squawking, and there was this nice breeze, leaves rustling in the wind. But even in this sunset, all I could think as I looked to my right was, why isn't there someone next to me? And for a long time, I searched for other people to fill that hole until I realized that those people were me. So I didn't need anyone in order to feel happy in experiences. And I can say I've sat many times at BB Lake now alone and been very happy, which doesn't mean I don't seek other people in some other experiences, but it was so beautiful being able to realize that shadow and then appreciate absolute happiness without needing the people in that moment. Another advanced principle is building your structure and state. For elite college students like you, that's probably going to mean going from orange into green or green into teal, which is a tier 2 structure stage. Huge difference between tier 1. And in terms of state, it's going from gross to subtle to causal to non-dual. If you want to learn more about how to do that, check out my Intro to Spiritual Journaling video up above. And also, another last reflective practice is learning to love impermanence. I particularly realize this myself because right now I'm in Ithaca and I'm going to be gone in 5-6 months, going off probably to Boston. So every time I see my friends in Ithaca, it's a profoundly deep happiness when I just appreciate that this won't last forever. I actually turn the impermanence into love and happiness. I love it because it won't last forever. The other major path of building absolute happiness is through contemplative practice, which in comparison to reflective practice is all about building your appreciation of reality so you can love it on a deeper level. For example, I love walking contemplation. It's fantastic. I just walk around and I ask really deep philosophical questions like, what is reality? What is consciousness? What is truth? Basically, everything you were taught right around the time, basically everything you were taught not to question right around the time when you should have been questioning it. By asking these questions, you learn more forms to love in reality. You more deeply appreciate reality, which helps you feel more happy because you have a more holistic, absolute happiness. Learning different critical art analysis skills has also helped me with this, like film analysis, poetry, painting. Every time I consume from one of these arts now, it's so much more satisfying because I can appreciate it so much more. Now, there is a danger to this, which is if you get too attached to analyzing everything, then it's hard to just love it for itself. I've particularly experienced this with writing because out of all of the art mediums I love the most, writing is up the number one still. So anytime I read any writing, I just always criticize it. And to some degree, I need to navigate that because it's slightly annoying. Every single article I read or book I read, I'm always got that critical mind on. Just understanding how reality works on a fundamental level is so satisfying and will make you so happy. Biology, religion, mechanical engineering. Across all 4 quadrants of spirituality, whether it be internal individual, your own mind, emotions, beliefs, thoughts, internal collective, the we space between people, conversation, culture, whether it be external individual, your body, material objects around you in your room, or exterior collective, social structures, institutions, entire systems, the universe, stars, galaxies, planets. Understanding all 4 of those quadrants is a huge amount of boosted absolute happiness. And paradoxically, another principle of advanced happiness is stop pursuing happiness so much. Just live, right? It's funny when I say this because I'm literally telling you to stop watching my content for a bit, which is exactly what I want you to do. Don't just watch these videos like they're snacks. Maybe there's a time to binge Conscious College videos, but ultimately I want you to contemplate and reflect and integrate what I say on your own. There's a trap you can get into with happiness, which is trying so hard to become happy that you forget to be happy. Don't fall for that one. I've fallen for that one. General principle of making yourself miserable in contrast to all of what I've been saying about making yourself happy is just flip everything I've said. So everything I said about building your reflective practices, building your contemplative practices, whatnot, just flip all of that and you'll become more selfish and more miserable. So that's another way you can look at this. Now, here's the thing. With all the general principles I've said, like generally most people across these things, this will make them happier. But the insight is that we find relative happiness in different ways because of our genetics, our specific structure stage and state stage, our shadows, our personality, our relationships, whatnot. So you can't just take the general principles. You also need to ask what specifically makes you happy and miserable. And to help you kickstart your brainstorming on this, I want to share with you some of the specific things that make me happy and miserable so that you can start thinking yourself what that might look like. So let's start with what makes me specifically happy. Highly original, aspirational, creative work. Man, that gives me so much joy. Writing these videos, creating products like the Cosmic Journaling Kit, making meta models like Spiral Knowing, the Truth Compass, Meta Hexagon, gamification design, like creating a gamified platform to gamify internal engagement at my gamification workplace. Pretty meta. Gamifying strategic thinking class that I took. Gamifying the Cosmic Journaling Kit. Creative work like my podcast, stand-up comedy, music, poetry, visual design of thumbnails and models. Huge amount of joy. I also love taking joy in simple stuff like eating peanut butter or the pump of your muscle as you're exercising or looking out a window at nature. Understanding something on a deep level for me is huge, like politics, psychology, science, language learning, game design, meta learning. Helping people develop spiritually. I love reading the comments in these videos. I love seeing friends and families grow. Long periods of solitude. Oh my God. I honestly, one of the things that's been so strange for me is before really immersing myself in this spiritual practice, most of my happiest moments were with other people. I gotta say, I think it's flipped at this point. Some of my happiest moments in life have been entirely on my own. I remember a 12-hour walk that I took after finishing with finals one semester. Walked all the way up to this huge mountain in the distance. Just laid, basked in the sun for 2 hours, and then walked all the way back. I spent a week long in London one summer just going to museums on my own. One of the happiest moments of my life. Deep immersion in a fantasy world or game is also incredible for me. My God. Like books like The Stormlight Archives, The Age of Madness, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Putting myself in that world. Jesus Christ, it's so much beauty. Films like Cloud Atlas or Interstellar or The Fall. Oh my goodness. Video games like Expedition 33, Minecraft, Terraria, The Witcher 3. Board games like Spyfall or Scythe or Frantic Fanfic. It's an online game, but you get the idea. Oh, a huge other aspect is appreciation for the beauty of consciousness. Like walking in nature in a long, silent backpacking retreat in Glacier National Park or Banff or Garibaldi and just reveling in the beauty of consciousness. Music does this for me a lot too. Like I've been listening to more spiritual music recently, and Jesus, it's so much better than some other music genres. Of course, generalizing, but you get the idea. Exercising is massive for me. I love weightlifting. I love running and biking. Consuming from information sources that shape my worldview, like actualize.org or Ken Wilber or Daniel Kahneman, John Vervaeke. Deep convos with friends, whether it be spirituality, philosophy, whatever. Also, talking about frick all with friends. That's also super fun. Talking about what they had for breakfast and then teasing them about it. I love doing that too. Doing absolutely nothing for the sake of doing nothing. In Dutch, this is called niksen. Now, crucially, you engage in doing nothing truly for the sake of doing nothing. If you do it with the purpose of relaxing, it loses its power. I love public speaking too, like speech and debate, TEDx talks. Teaching is huge, whether it be outdoor education classes at Cornell, video courses, workshops I've done recently, Unconscious College. God, it's so nice. Walking, long walks around BB, the Arboretum. Some of the happiest moments of my life are just walking. Long hangouts with one person. There's something magical that happens when you spend 2 weeks with a single person. You learn more about them than sometimes an entire year of friendship. Like with a friend that I went to the Netherlands and Texas with for 2 weeks. A friend I went to Vancouver with for 2 weeks. A Glacier National Park for a month. Indonesia and Singapore for a month. Fantastic. Here's a very interesting one. Overcoming my own self-deception and growing spiritually. I've realized recently, most people, this has been strange for me actually. It's going to sound dumb when I say it. I've realized most people don't enjoy overcoming their own self-deception, which should be obvious to me, but like I genuinely get pleasure from it. I seek it out. And part of my own growth has been realizing that most people don't. Being my own boss is huge. The autonomy, the creative agency, the ability to work on something purposeful without needing it to be a certain way. I haven't completely gotten there yet. I hope to get there someday, but that's very important to me, is at some point being financially free. I also want to create huge impact. Spiritual business of some sort, like this. Thinking about marketing titles and thumbnails. I don't know why. I don't like marketing for the most part, or sales, but like marketing titles and thumbnails, I just love. I think it's the art thinking of it like an art. Really, I think of my whole business like an art. Business is an art. You can turn it into an art. Metaphysical romantic relationships, very powerful. I haven't had a fully, totally 100% metaphysical romantic relationship yet. That's something I really want. But some aspects of the 4 relationships I've had have been like that. And lastly, something that specifically makes me very happy are psychedelics. Not all my trips, first trip and second trip were great, and 7th and 8th were great. In a sense, psychedelics really, more so than almost, I would say basically anything that I mentioned so far, will just rapidly progress your degree to embody absolute happiness. Because what they do is they really put you face to face with the imaginary nature of reality and the self-othering that you're doing. And any shadows that you have, they will come up much more powerfully than if you weren't on a psychedelic. Now, I'm not saying go do it right after this video. Think about the laws in your country and also your own readiness. I think psychedelics, I've actually, over the years, gained much, much more respect for them. And I treat them basically like a deeply dangerous ritual that you need to have respect for. They are not physically dangerous most of the time, but psychologically you can really, really put yourself through some difficult stuff. Which brings us to what specifically makes me miserable. And one of those is psychedelics. I've had some bad trips. Trips 3 through 6 were all pretty bad. A lot of it was my own fault. I'll make a videos on that in the future, how to use psychedelics mindfully and try and navigate bad trips. But I don't regret those bad trips. They taught me a lot about life. Life logistics, overall, I hate it. Specifically where I can't think of something else while I'm doing it. Because, if I'm washing the dishes or I'm cleaning my apartment, I can put on a podcast or something like that. Or just love the activity. But something about like doing taxes or buying tickets to travel or scheduling something, I just, it's so difficult for me. It requires just enough brain power where I can't do anything else, but is also still boring. Another thing that makes me miserable is a lack of feminine energy in my life. This is something strange for me to realize recently. Like not seeing women at the gym or not being around women to some degree. I'm like, for some reason, it just feels like something is lost. Like a beauty in life is gone if that's not there. Business funnel creation and sales. God. Like creating the funnel for the cosmic journaling kit, as well as figuring out payment processing. I just want to make the world better. I don't want to worry about money or payment processing or funneling. Bad romantic relationships or relationships at all. Lack of commitment and respect, particularly, really have gotten me over time. Online dating, Jesus Christ. The collective conscious of the online dating community is so low. And I'm not judging or blaming people or saying that they're at fault for this. Some degree it's the online dating app structure, but also some degree it's just our collective selfishness as a culture. It's so bad. It's so bad. The amount of ghosting and flakiness and just brain dead convos that I've had. Honestly, so much suffering has come from online dating for me. And a lot of the articles I've written have been how to make it more conscious. Because it can be. Online dating could be so much better. I try and make it better. But I've also fallen for the same things that I criticize because it's so hard. Having to do something like work or money makes me miserable. I hate the feeling of needing to do something, not for the sake of doing it, but for something else. Not being my own boss. I am technically not my own boss right now, but I mean more if it's like my boss is domineering, which I have had in the past. That's really difficult. Too much time around unambitious people. makes me miserable. I'm not saying being unambitious is morally wrong. I'm saying for what I want in life, I want to create massive change. I want to do a lot. I want to change the world. And so being around people that just want to go to their 9 to 5 or do the same thing every day, I can't do it. I can do it in spurts, but I can't have them close as friends. Too much scheduled stuff makes me miserable. I don't hate meetings necessarily if they're good meetings, but like too many scheduled things in a day for weeks, really difficult for me. I love unscheduled time where I can just fill it with what I want in the moment. Too little time for deep creative work is really hard for me. So those are some of the things that make me miserable. Thank you for hearing all these specific things that make me happy and miserable. Now, the question I want you to ask yourself is, how do you find out specifically what makes you happy? That's how you make this actionable. And some of the things that I think you'll realize is just experience more. You're in college, you haven't experienced that much. So experience more, reflect on those experiences, and then contemplate. Build reflection practices, build contemplative practices. I talk a lot about how to do that in other parts of the channel. And you'll find out what specifically makes you happy. In conclusion, wrapping up this whole video, happiness is like building a rocket. You think you'll reach happiness in space. So you create deep structures of relative happiness in the launch pad and the rocket itself. You navigate your shadows, you build up your structure stage, your states, get better friends, become more secure in yourself, build more integrity, everything we've been talking about. And then once you finally built the launch pad and the rocket, and you're in the rocket, counting down from 10, you start launching into space. As you're launching into space, in that process, you realize there's nowhere to go. Space, Earth, the whole universe, it's all absolute happiness. And yet the journey was not wasted. Because it was the building of the launch pad and the rocket that taught you how to stop searching in the first place. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out my Cosmic Journaling Kit in the description below. It's a free gamified journaling system to help you grow your emotional intelligence, your self-understanding, and purpose with over 1,000 journaling questions and 5 templates in just 15 minutes a day. And it will help you embody a lot of the happiness things we've been talking about in this video. As always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Eat some peanut butter, and bye-bye.